as we said, this is the first webinar of the month of October. We are heading into the festive season and the high season for sales for most small business owners, because October, November, December, and January typically tend to be the period of time where small business owners are racking up the most amount of sales for their businesses. And therefore, it is imperative that you put in the best amount of investment and activity, whether it is in terms of effort or actually running campaigns, etc., behind your business in this period of time to really help you to run your, reach out to your customers and to really build your brand. And today, to help us to do that, we have an expert speaker here with us, Sai Boguru from Facebook. Thank you so much, Sai, for joining us today. We're delighted to have you. Yeah, we're delighted to have you. So let me just give a quick introduction to Sai before I hand over the webinar to him. So he's an account manager with Facebook. He's been with them for the past couple of years, since 2018. In fact, so it's more than 2000 to a couple of years there. And he's very focused on accelerating the growth for different business types, both MNCs as well as local small business enterprises, to really make the best of the Facebook family of apps and grow the business, right? And he seems to have a particular sort of like expertise in the fintech, retail, and the tech space. He's based out of Singapore, which is the head office here. So he brings a lot of a wealth of knowledge with respect to what Facebook is doing and how really to leverage Facebook and its advertising campaigns and strategies. And that's what he's going to be covering today. We will, as always, allow you to raise your questions that you want Sai to answer at the end of the session in the Q&A section, please. That would make it, that would make sure that we do not miss any of your questions, and we have allocated time for it. So all questions will be answered. So please do raise your question and answers there. The chat channel is really only for us to chat with you and let you know about things. So please do not use that to raise any questions. So having said that, Sai, over to you. I'm going to stop sharing my screen now.
Sure, sounds good. Let me just start sharing mine. Just a second, let me get into slideshow mode.
Fantastic, we can see it.
All right, great. Hi everyone, thank you for joining me this evening, and thanks also to Shopmatic for extending the invite. So as Uma already mentioned, I'm Sai Pogaru. I currently work with Facebook as an account manager, and I work largely with retail, telco, and a lot of fintech businesses. But that said, I have worked with SMEs in the past, so I am aware of the different levels of experience and also familiarity that a lot of businesses have with the platform. I've worked with people who are relatively early, still getting started, but also I've worked with those who are very complex in their usage of the platform itself. So really today's session is to provide a bit of an overview and get a sense of how you can get the most value out of the Facebook advertising you're putting in. And I think I was looking through the results of the poll, and it was interesting to see that there's businesses over here across the spectrum. There's some who post regularly, there's some who use ad campaigns, and there are some who are still getting their feel of Facebook advertising. So hopefully this session's useful, and the content for some might be a little too complex, but if it is, then there's no issues. I will also share at the end resources to get up to speed or look through some of the content that I will be touching. Let's dive right in. So let's get started first and foremost. I know many of you over here, based on the previous question, are currently boosting posts. And either you put up post on your Facebook page, or once you put up the post, you basically boost it as an ad. Now, I want us to take a step back and start thinking about what do we think about when we think about a Facebook ad and Facebook ad campaign. So there's many different factors that come in. There is something called the campaign objective. There's something called the bidding and buying strategy. Then there's targeting. Then there is placements, which is where do you want to show the ad. And then there is the actual ad itself. Now, I want us to, for those of us who are not already running ad campaigns through an ads manager, I just want to introduce this concept and get everyone on the same page that Boosting a post is generally a very lightweight and an easy way to run an ad. But if we want to take it a step further and we want a lot more granularity with how we run our ads, there's something called the Ads Manager. And in the Ads Manager is where you can start creating ads with a lot more ease, but also a lot more complexity, where you can have a lot of control on what type of objectives you're choosing, what type of targeting you have, where do you want to show the ad. All that granularity comes through something called the Ads Manager. And in the Ads Manager, unlike with a Facebook Boost post, we actually think about, so just for today, so we'll be talking about, we think about these different buckets over here: the campaign objective, what is the buying strategy, targeting, placements, creative. Just for today's sake, I'm only going to touch upon 3 of these, which is how do we select campaign objectives, how do we choose the right targeting audience, and how do we build the mobile first, creatives, which aligns very closely to what the poll has indicated to be the common challenges that you face. So thinking about the Ads Manager, right? So like I was mentioning earlier, boosting a post is relatively lightweight. If we want to think about running actual campaigns, then we go through something called the Ads Manager. And in the Ads Manager, when we think about campaigns, this is how it's broadly set up. You have a campaign, and then under that you have ad sets. You can have multiple ad sets per campaign. And then under the ad sets, you have your different ads. Now, at the campaign level is where you select a campaign objective. At the ad set level is where you select your budgets, your timing, which is when do you want the ads to run, from when to when. You select your targeting, which is who do you want to show the ad to. You select your bidding strategy. So there's different bidding strategies. We won't cover that today, but just for those who are aware, bidding strategy happens at the ad set level. And then under the ad sets, you can have multiple ads. It doesn't just have to be 2. You can have more than 2 ads. And the ads are essentially, you can have video, you can have single image. There's a lot of different room to play around with it. But broadly speaking, this is how you would set up a campaign in an Ads Manager. And as you can see already, for those of you who haven't run campaigns before, it is a step above boosting a post because it allows you a lot more control and granularity. Now, let's dive in a little bit deeper into the different layers. So like I said, we talked today about objective setting, we talk about targeting, and we'll talk about creatives. So let's talk about objective to get started with. How many of us are guilty of doing this? We run contests, we ask people to comment, we ask people to share, we ask people to like. I'm guessing a lot of businesses are guilty of doing this, right from the smaller, startups all the way to the bigger corporates. We see this often. But the reality is that just because someone likes a post doesn't mean they're going to buy it. So at the end of the day, that like may not have any significant business impact or business value. So when we think about evolution as a business, we want to be evolving from, okay, how do we get more fans? How do we get more likes, comments, and shares? To actually thinking about how can we drive sales? How can we get the most relevant potential customers? How do we increase our brand presence and brand awareness? So we want to be shifting from this idea of fans, likes, and comments to thinking about actual business metrics. In the past, maybe about a decade ago, that's what mattered. Likes, shares, comments, all of that mattered because that was the user behavior back then. If you liked something, it most likely indicated that, okay, you have some interest in, making a potential purchase. That's not necessarily the case nowadays. Nowadays, people, we know it from our own behavior, right? I think back to when was the last time I liked a post from a business? Hardly ever. Maybe 1 out of the last 100 ads I saw. But if I think about when was the last time I took a business action on an ad I saw, yeah, there's a lot more possibility. Maybe 40 out of the 100 ads, or lesser, maybe 30 out of the 100 ads, I took a business action. But the clear difference is that I'm not going to like something, and yet I might want to take a particular business action on it. So as businesses yourselves, you want to be thinking about, instead of likes, comments, shares, thinking about, okay, is my ad driving any awareness for my business/brand? What is the reach? How many people am I reaching? Am I getting leads? Am I getting conversions, purchases, app installs? depending on what metrics you have. So the key essentially then becomes, how do you align your business goals with the consumer journey? Now, I'm sure many of you as business owners yourselves or as marketeers yourselves are aware of the, the marketing funnel, right? Which is, we think about the consumer journey as going from awareness to consideration to conversion. Now, where we always encourage advertisers to come from as well is to think about, how does our Facebook advertising, and again, when I say Facebook, I mean, I'm referring to all the Facebook family of apps, so Facebook, Instagram, Messenger. How does our advertising efforts on these platforms map with our customer journey across the marketing funnel? So really then, the core becomes to identify the right Facebook advertising objective. So remember I was saying earlier that there is the ads manager. This is broadly what it looks like. When you set up a campaign, you get these different options where you can choose different campaign objectives according to where in the customer journey you're looking to reach. So there is awareness, there's consideration, there's conversion. For awareness, you can run ads for brand awareness or for reach, to reach as many people as possible. For consideration, you can run ads to try and get people to go to your website, or to try and get people to download your app or watch your video. Or if you're in the bottom half of that marketing funnel, then for conversion, you can run ads to get people to take a conversion action, like a purchase action on your website, for example. So we encourage businesses to think about the entire consumer journey and map that to your Facebook advertising. So Facebook advertising then no longer becomes about just an ad and then you push out the ad, but really going a step beyond that to say, okay, what is this ad trying to achieve? Where in the customer journey am I looking to target? Am I looking at the awareness phase? Am I looking at the demand generation phase? Am I looking at the acquisition phase or the transaction phase? And depending on where in the customer journey you're looking to target, you would have a different campaign objective to match that. So like I said, if you're looking at awareness, you'd probably run a reach campaign or a brand awareness campaign. If you're looking at building that consideration, getting people to go to your website or getting people to watch your ads, you would run either in the consideration and acquisition phase. So you would run video views campaigns or you would run traffic campaigns. Or if at the end of the day, e-commerce businesses, we want conversions, we want purchases, then you would run conversion campaigns. So that in essence is how we make use of Facebook advertising to just go beyond pushing out a post and pushing out an ad and essentially just boosting it out there as a very general ad. Now, when we think about mapping the marketing funnel into a media plan, it might be a lot of complexity, and I know that different businesses have different levels of priority on how complex they want their marketing to be. But the reality is that we can actually take the marketing funnel and map it onto different objectives, and for each objective you can have different targeting, and for each targeting you can have different types of creatives. So for example, this is thinking about how do you build advertising for the different stages of the consumer journey. Let's say we want to talk about the consideration phase, right? You want to increase website visits, for example. So you could run a campaign with an objective of traffic for landing page views to get people to go visit your website. And you'd want to target different kinds of targeting audiences. I'll touch on the targeting portion a little bit later, so we don't have to worry too much about it. And you can have a particular type of creative, creative that tells a story about your brand or about your product or business. But let's say that's one type of campaign. It reaches certain types of people. Now, concurrently, you want another type of campaign to drive purchases, because at the end of the day, purchases is what matters, right? So then you would run a conversions campaign. And again, you would have a different type of targeting audience for that. And your creative also would probably have a different messaging. Maybe in this creative, you'd focus a lot more on the product, because the idea is that these are people who are more high intent. They might have seen your ad before. Maybe they might have, seen the consideration ad come onto your website and then been hit with this conversion ad. So you can have a different creative messaging to push them down into this actual purchase journey. So this is a broad overview. Now, it could be, for a lot of businesses, this might be too much complexity, or maybe not something that makes a lot of, it's too much, I would say, effort in order to get the same results. But in the long run, this would be the North Star that I think a lot of businesses should look to aim towards, which is, how do we build our advertising on the platform to map the consumer journey all the way from the top, which is awareness, till the bottom, which is conversion and loyalty. So it's not just that, but even in terms of how you measure the success of your advertising across this consumer journey, you want to think about the fact that when you run an ad on Facebook for a particular objective, you will have different success metrics. So if you're running an ad for brand awareness, let's say your brand is XYZ, and your objective now is, hey, I want people to really recall my brand, and really, I want to get my brand out there. I want to focus on brand building. So then you would run a brand awareness campaign, and your success metric that you measure at the end of it is something like an ad recall lift, which is an estimate of, how likely is it that people remember seeing your ad. Or let's say, your objective now is to increase the number of people who visit your website. You just want people to go to your website to check out your products, to check out your, the different features you have on the website. Then you would run a traffic campaign, and your metric of success for that campaign would be things like number of website visits, number of landing page visits, what is the cost per website visit. So all of these would become your, metrics to track. And similarly, across the conversion as well, if you're looking for sales, you would run a conversion campaign, and you would track your cost per purchase, you would track the number of items purchased, and things like that. So really the idea is that there's different metrics you can track for different objectives, and the core of it all comes down to what is the business objective that you are looking for at the end of it. And very often businesses, they can have multiple objectives. It can be both branding, it can be both increasing website visits, it can also be increasing purchases. And at the end of that, you just have to figure out, how do you map all these objectives onto your Facebook advertising? So while that sinks in, I'll also just say that I mentioned this earlier. When we talk about Facebook, we don't just talk about Facebook as the platform. We talk about Facebook, Instagram, Messenger. And really speaking, when we look at our advertising, we should be looking at advertising across the different platforms, across Instagram, across Facebook, across Newsfeed, across Story. And the one advantage of the Ads Manager way of creating campaigns is when you create your campaign, you can run that ad across all these platforms in the same creation flow. So you just select a button and you let the system decide where to show the ad based on cost efficiencies. Yeah. So just an example, yeah, you can run different types of advertising across the different placements that exist on the platform. This is an example. I'm just going to run you through some case studies. This is an example of J & Co Jewelry. So for those of you who are in Singapore, you might have heard of J & Co Jewelry. For those of you who are not, this is essentially a jewelry e-commerce business. And they ran Instagram Stories ads, and they saw that 58% of their total sales were actually driven by ads on Instagram Stories. Now, again, I want us to focus on the fact that sales were driven by ads on Instagram Stories. And I know, very often as e-commerce businesses, we can have questions on, hey, when we run ads on our platform, how effective are they in terms of actually driving sales? It is, and that's what this case study kind of goes to show, that majority of them came from the advertising on the platform, and there was 13% lower cost per purchase, and also 17% lower cost per purchase as compared to a week prior when they didn't use IG Stories. So again, it ties in with this idea that when you're running ads for different placements. You're running ads for your feed as well as your stories. Both platforms are equally important, as well as all the other placements as well, including Messenger. I'm going to give you a few other examples. Now, this is a much bigger company, and I know that we might feel like, hey, this is part of the Estee Lauder companies, and it's not really an SME. But I think, we don't have to focus on that, because a lot of the learnings that come from this actually very much apply to SMEs. And I'm going to talk about this also a little later on when we think about creatives. We might look at these creatives and we might feel like, hey, that's so daunting. How can we ever build creatives like this? No wonder they have such good performance, because they can build such good creatives. I'm going to debunk all those myths in just a little while. That what these big companies are doing on the platform is exactly what SMEs with very tight resources or very limited budgets can also do on the platform. So in this case study, this is Smashbox India. They launched a shade of this always on liquid lipstick, and they saw that there was a 6.8% lift in ad recall. So there is a lift in people who remembered seeing this ad, and it also led to 2.7x less expensive brand awareness amongst their audiences. So I just want us to also focus on this idea that when we run our advertising, it's not always just for getting people to purchase, but there is also strong branding elements, and there is, the platform plays an important role in getting your brand across to new audiences out there. Another case study is with HealthCart. I don't know, some of you may or may not have heard of this, but HealthCart is another e-commerce channel, and they started using Facebook to reach their audiences. And what they saw was a 50% increase in sales for Muscle Blaze, which is their protein formula, and not just an increase in sales, but they also saw increase in brand metrics. So again, the key over here is that utilizing the platform for both increasing your brand awareness as well as increasing your performance objectives, which is increasing sales and increasing your return on investments. Now, like I said, these examples may seem daunting, but I don't want us to get feel like, hey, this is not stuff that if our resources are limited, this is not stuff that we can do. Absolutely not. I'm going to touch upon that a little later on when we get to the creatives portion, that what these businesses are doing and achieving on the platform is exactly what anyone else can do. It's just about ensuring that we're opting into the right strategies. So yeah, this was HealthCart. You see their ad, you click on it, it opens up their website, and from there, it's just basically the consumer journey of making a purchase. Right. So with that, that's just a broad overview of how we select our campaign objectives and how do we map our objectives onto Facebook advertising in general. So again, just to recap, we really think about the marketing funnel and we think about what part of the marketing funnel we want to prioritize and how do we map that onto Facebook objectives. Now, here comes the portion that was the top of the list in the poll when we asked on what are concerns that people have when they think about running ad campaigns on Facebook and Instagram, which was how do we select the right audiences? Now, before I answer that, I want to take a step back and I want to actually get everyone on the same page and really think about, okay, when we think about advertising and when we think about Facebook campaigns, we have a broad reach with our audiences, right? The platform has lots and lots of people with lots of different interests, and it's essentially it's got a lot of people on it. The key over here, though, is recognizing that out of all these people, very few may actually end up being your potential customers. Now, how do we know who these potential customers are? The reality is it's a bit of a complex game, right? We may have a best, an estimate or an understanding of saying, okay, my business is about, let's say sports equipment. I know that generally my kind of customers are people who are interested in sports. But equally, there may be people who we don't know, who don't fall under the sports category, who could also be your customers. So the reality is that when we think about targeting on the platform, there is a lot of understanding that needs to happen in terms of who are our potential customers. And that's kind of the gap that, we want to bridge. Now, from what I understand right now, many of you might be familiar with something called core audiences, which is where you select your audience based on things like, okay, people interested in sports and health and nutrition between the ages of 18 to 65, living in India, living in Singapore, and then you run your ad, right? Most of the times, that's how we build our audiences, which is we indicate interest, we indicate demographics, and we select our location, and then we run the ad, right? I'm guessing majority of us are using this method. But I'm not sure if many of you are aware, but a lot of you might equally be doing this. But just in case you're not, there are two other types of targeting. One is called custom audiences, and the other is called lookalike audiences. So custom audiences and lookalike audiences are two other types of targeting, which really serves to fill the gap that your core audience targeting cannot do. Again, core audience targeting, because like I was mentioning earlier, we don't really know who you might not know who your exact customers are just based on their interests. So custom audiences, lookalike audiences come in handy. Now, what are these? I'll dive into that in just a second. So core audience, like I mentioned, is the default way to create your ads and select your targeting. It's based on your characteristics such as location, demographics, interest, behavior, the most standard way of selecting your audience. So again, and your ad will appear to those who match those characteristics. So, 34 to 55, let's say you're a business called Lucky Shrub, and you select all people living in Bangalore, interested in garden design, and who check out a lot of home design content, and that's the kind of people you target. This is what a core audience is. Now, what are the other two types of targeting that you can do? There's something called custom audiences. Essentially, custom audiences are people where you can either upload audiences, so people who you feel may already know your business. You can either upload audiences onto the platform, either through a CSV file, or it can even be audiences that visit your website. Now, I'm not sure if many of you are aware, but let's say people are visiting your website. These are audiences. You can make use of the fact that people visit your audiences and create that as a group, as a target audience for you to show ads to. And not just website audience, but even on your Facebook page. If people are engaging with your Facebook page, you can create an audience of people who have engaged with your posts or with your page, and you can essentially run advertising targeting those. So again, thinking about website, right? Because all of us are, we're within this e-commerce space. Let's say people are coming and they're checking out your website. They're taking lots of different actions on your website. They're checking out, different products. They're checking out different links. All of these are actions that can be, in a way, tracked, and you can create audiences out of these. So let's say I want to show an ad specifically to those people who are checking out projects. You can actually create an audience for people who have, just clicked on projects and show them a very specific targeted ad. And all of this can happen through something called custom audiences. So you can retarget them and you can show them very specific ads. But you can also do exclusion. So you can also say, okay, I want to exclude all the people who've clicked on projects and show everyone else the different kind of ad. You can do all of that as well. Now, how do you do this? Well, there is something called the Facebook Pixel. I'm not sure if many of you are aware of the Facebook Pixel, but essentially the Facebook Pixel is just a piece of code that you place on your website, which allows you to measure the results of your ads. It allows you to, track different actions, and you can build audiences, as I was mentioning earlier, to use as a form of targeting. So it's very simple. It's just a piece of code. It's relatively easy to essentially install or input onto your website. But even if not, I mean, this is where the partnership with Shopmatic is so efficient, which is, for all of you who are, Shopmatic partners, Shopmatic's made it very easy, which is you can actually just go to your marketing page and you can access all of this. You can easily set up your business page, your pixel, you can create a shop, and it's relatively straightforward. You can do it for Facebook, and once you click on it, you can see that there's a lot of different things you can do on the platform. And one of the options, as you can see, is to actually install the Facebook Pixel, which really makes it easier for you to start mapping out the different user actions on your website. And you can also obviously do it for Instagram. So once you enable those, you'll see it over here that it's been enabled. And similarly, you can do that for Instagram as well. So obviously, Shopmatic has, they've made it really easy to go about this whole process. But yeah, if there is, any further questions on this, there's also resources available on the Facebook Health Center, and similarly, I'm sure Shopmatic also has resources available to help out. But Facebook Pixel is definitely one of those things that can help you, when it comes to creating audiences and ensuring that you're reaching a level above just your interest and demographic audiences. So again, how do you get the most out of your Facebook Pixel? You can start tracking the customer journey on your website. You can build high intent audiences. And you can also optimize, your business actions towards what it is that matters. Like saying, okay, I want to show ads to those people who checked out the product page, or so on and so forth. Now, that's the second type of targeting that we spoke about. I did mention that there is a third type as well. And the third type is what we call a lookalike audiences, where essentially saying, if you say that, okay, I know all the people who, because of once I've installed the Facebook Pixel, I have an audience of all those who have purchased on my website. So I now have an audience that says people who purchased in the past 30 days. Now, what lookalike audiences allows you to do is you can actually create an audience group that looks very similar to whatever it is that's your input group. So let's say your input group is people who purchased in the past 30 days. A lookalike audience allows you to create an audience group that looks very similar according to what Facebook thinks. These are people who look very similar to people who, for example, have purchased in the past 30 days. So again, that's an additional level that goes beyond what already exists. So you're now relying on systems, whatever understanding the platform has, to basically say, okay, I'm going to find you people who look a lot like whatever it is that you are, creating the base source as. So once you select a base source, Facebook will then identify the common qualities of the people in it, and then it will find other people who it thinks look a lot like that, and it will show ads to people who are similar to this source. So again, what does this look like? So your custom audience, let's say, people who take specific actions on your website, for example, they can then become your source for your lookalike audiences. Now, touching upon a little bit on data security and considerations, I did mention earlier, as part of custom audiences, you can upload customer data as well. You can create audiences by uploading customer data as well. Of course, with that, we have to be obviously mindful of the fact that there's a lot of data security considerations. So whenever you upload customer data, you will be asked how you obtain it. And once that's done, there is something called data hashing. So, based on the data that you upload onto the platform, all of that gets hashed and essentially gets encrypted before it goes to the Facebook servers. And what they will do is they will take this audience and they will try and match it with profiles of people, on the platform. But of course, it will never be attributable to a person because all this data is hashed. So the matching takes place, but as a business and even as Facebook, we will never be able to know, we can't, always attribute for the people or the customer data that you're uploading to actually who's being matched and served with the ad. So the data gets hashed, it gets encrypted. And again, once the matching is done, there is another process of hashing. And from there, that's how you're able to access this custom audience to essentially run ads to. So that's broadly on the data security piece. And of course, once all of it is done, the audience is deleted. Now, that summarizes broadly the question on how do we take our targeting to the next level. So instead of just using our interest and demographics and people who are matching certain behaviors, I would highly encourage us to also explore the other two options, which is custom audiences, where you put in pixel on the website, track website actions and create audiences for those, and also lookalike audiences, where you create audiences who look alike, like whatever it is that you're creating an audience for. Now, the other question that in the poll was quite popular was on how to create effective ad designs and how to create effective creatives. So exactly as you said, one of the keys, to essentially building, ensuring that the performance is actually at the best possible value for yourselves, is ensuring that you have right creators. Because at the end of the day, when we come down to it, people are only going to take action on your ad if the creative is good and it's attractive, right? I mean, if we think about ourselves as consumers, we only want to click on creatives that we find attractive, that we find eye-catchy. So even yourselves as business owners, as marketeers, as SMEs, we need to start thinking about how do we build right creatives and how do we build effective creatives. And it can be done, without too much effort and hassle. But before that, I want us to grasp this concept, which is that, a lot of us think, hey, the world is going mobile. Actually, I'm going to say, no, the world has already gone mobile. So when we think about creatives, we should be thinking about building for the mobile world. Because everyone, if we think about ourselves as users, we are going to be most likely using the platform, using Facebook, Instagram, Messenger on our mobile. And the mobile feed is very different. It's very different from a computer. It's fast, it's frequent, and it's sound off, right? Think about how often we use our mobile phones and how quickly we scroll through things. We're talking about a scrolling speed that is literally, it looks a little bit like this. So incredibly fast, right? 2.5 seconds on website, and on mobile, even less, 1.7 seconds. That's literally the window of opportunity that, as businesses yourselves, you have to try and capture a user's attention. So the key then becomes, how do you make your creative thumb-stopping? And that is the core question we have to think about whenever we're putting up a post. Any post that we're putting up, any ad campaign we're running, we just have to ensure that, hey, this is an ad that we ourselves, if we were a consumer, would click on. The key thing also to remember is that at the end of the day, video is really the thing that's booming and that's growing on the platform. People want to watch videos, and if we think about ourselves as users, video catches our attention a lot better than a still image would. Now, content and on mobile, especially when it's video, is consumed very differently as compared to something like TV, or in the past, whenever we'd watch advertisements, it will be a long form advertisement, and the main message of the ad comes in maybe about 30 seconds into the video. But on mobile, it's incredibly different because your main message has to come within the first 5 seconds. Because what happens is, after the first 5 seconds, user attention drops. So literally, your window of opportunity is in the first 5 to 10 seconds or at most 15 seconds. Because beyond that, people aren't going to be watching your video. They would have already, we saw how quickly people scroll through, right? So they have a very limited attention span. And your window of opportunity becomes the first 5 to 10 to 15 seconds. Now, when we think about building creatives for mobile, especially mobile video, because as I said, video is generally, from our own experiences, right? As consumers, video catches our attention a lot faster, right? So what are the key principles that we've identified? One is, of course, you want to ensure that you're capturing attention quickly and you're delivering the key message, your brand or your product within the first 15 seconds. Second is you want to ensure that you're building for sound off audiences, but at the same time, ensure that you have sound on. Because yeah, some people will, watch your ad with sound on, but a lot of people may equally watch it without sound on. So if they're watching it without sound on, are you making it easy for them to follow your ad? Third is framing your story and building vertical. Again, when we think ads, we always think horizontal, TV style ad, right? But really speaking, on mobile, and you might have seen this as users, or if we think about things like Instagram stories, everything is vertical. We use our mobile phone vertical. So again, when we build our ads, whether it's a still image or a video, we got to build mobile. And lastly, it's about getting creative, because at the end of the day, people on the platform, they're looking for fun things, not just because you're competing not just with other ads, you're also competing with everyone else's posts, everyone else's, the news and all these kind of things. So you want to make sure that you get a bit creative. So I'm going to show some examples very quickly. These are just thought starters on these different principles. It's not the best way or the right way to do it, but it's just to give you an idea of what it would look like to go about these principles. So for example, for capturing attention quickly, this is the way, Lay's did something like this. This was Alibaba. This was Japan Airways, and this was Jameson. I'm just going to let these all play simultaneously, so you can just watch and see how they're building. It's relatively straightforward, very simple, less than 10, 15 seconds at most, but it does the job. The branding is clear, it captures attention quickly, it's visible. Now, the other thing, which is how do we build for sound off? So all of these, they have sound incorporated, but you'll notice that actually what else they have is they have some text on it. So that if I'm scrolling through and I don't have my sound on, I can still follow. I can still see the key brand, I can still see the key message, and it's relatively straightforward. I can follow exactly what's happening. Again, I'm just going to let this play so you can just watch, just get some ideas. Right. Now, the third principle, which we discussed, was on framing, right? And we want to ensure that we're building for mobile. Now, take a look at this ad, right? It's the same brand, it's the same ad, but which one would you say captures your attention a lot more, and which one would you say, you're more likely to look at? Arguably, you would look at the one that's either a square or a vertical, right? Why? Because it takes up more of the real estate on your phone. So when we build our creatives as well, we have to be mindful that majority of the users will be on phone, and when they see your ad, they're going to be looking at it with their phone as in the vertical. Basically, it's going to be vertical in their hands, right? So when we build creatives, we want to think about how do we ensure that it's playing around with this vertical user behavior that consumers have. And the reality is that you're paying the same, whether you're paying, whether you are getting a horizontal ad or a vertical ad or a square ad. It all costs the same anyway. It's the same real estate. So you might as well take up more of the real estate and ensure that your ad is built for the mobile world. So what we generally see is, so again, you can see that it's a video, they're all videos, but one catches your attention a lot more. Generally, what we see is when people build vertical creatives or square creatives, there actually is a 3 to 9 point lift in ad recall, which is, people actually remember seeing the ad a lot more as compared to a standard horizontal video. So again, the key message is to build for this mobile world. And lastly, the last concept we talked about is to play around, and let's play a bit more with how we build our creative. Let's make it fun. Let's make it engaging, right? So for example, here's an idea, like building a negative space below, or like in McDonald's case, they just added in 2 grid lines to make it seem like someone is giving you their, the burger out of the screen, or playing around with tiles. So it's just one square video, but they had different tiles and the videos kind of merge into one. So playing around with your creative definitely helps. Now, I know when we watch all these videos, when we watch all these ads, the first thing that comes to our mind is, hey, these are big brands. I mean, no wonder, they have all the resources to do it. And when we think about startups or SMEs, or even generally, as a business, if we're being very conservative on our resources, we may feel like, hey, we don't have equipment to do this. We don't have money to do this. We may not have the knowledge to do this. Or even just generally, I don't think, me as a marketeer, I can pull something off that looks like this. But actually, that's not necessarily true. And that's the kind of myth that we want to break, that building video creatives that is attractive and eye-catchy is not as hard as we think it is. And there's a lot of apps that can narrow this gap. So for example, again, on the left, let's assume, this is your business, and you've taken this picture, right? Taking a picture is, anyone can do this. You just, with your phones, with fantastic camera quality, anyone can do this. But there's a lot of apps that can, as an example, they can make it into something animated like this. Now, arguably, of course, this is a little loud and in your face. So maybe, you wouldn't want to have it so loud to speak. But just to give you an example that, hey, something as simple as a picture can be made into an animated version. You can add, music to it. And it can really be done. There's a lot of apps that can allow to do this. And not just apps, even on Facebook, in the Ads Manager, you will see something called Video Creation Kit, which has a lot of templates where you just input templates of your text, your images, and you can create videos very, very easily. Here are just some apps. Obviously, we don't endorse these apps. We don't work with these apps. But we're not even saying that these are all the apps that are out there. There's probably loads more. Some of these may even be outdated. But just, some of the apps that we've seen in the past that can help with, making this whole video creation process easier. These are some of the apps that are out there. But again, there's loads of others. We don't work with any of these. I mean, of course, Instagram Stories and Boomerang is a different story. But there are lots of apps out there, and I would encourage all of you just to go play around with it, because making video creatives is not as hard as it looks. We actually have seen some of the biggest FMCG businesses make ads on IG Stories. As in, they actually make their actual ad on Instagram Story, they shoot it on Instagram Story, and then they save it, and then they run it afterwards as an ad, on all the other placements. So again, this idea that making video creatives, it's not as complicated as we often make it to be. So I'm a little conscious of time, and I want to make sure that I leave enough space for Q&A. So with that, just going to recap things really quickly. Ensure that you're choosing your right campaign objectives. Ensure that you're choosing the right targeting methods. We talked about 3 different targeting methods that goes beyond just your standard interest and demographic targeting. And lastly, ensuring that you're building creatives for the mobile world and you're choosing the right creatives to help you succeed. There's also resources. There is the Facebook Blueprint. There's a lot of client help available for real-time support. There's a help center with a lot of articles that you can refer to on Facebook advertising. There's success stories. Specifically, I just want to point out Facebook Blueprint is actually a free course that you can take. It's got modules on right from the basics of Facebook advertising to the more complex stuff on Facebook advertising. It's got free videos and classes and all of this. So I would highly encourage anyone who's interested to explore that. So with that, I'm going to wrap up, and I'm going to open things up for Q&A. And thanks everyone for giving your attention. And Uma, I think, I'm ready to take Q&A if there's any questions that came about.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Sai. I think it was a delightful presentation that you shared with us. We're already having some people thanking us on the chat. So great. So why don't you get on to the video?
Yeah.
And we can take some Q&As, yeah? Fantastic. Thank you so much. So there we go, people. That's Sai, who has actually walked us through this presentation for the past 1 hour on the various things that we can actually do on Facebook. And we have some questions already here, so we can just run through them. And I would encourage everyone else who is in the session, if you have any question and answers that you would like us to sort of address, please do raise them in the Q&A channel, and we will be happy to make sure we go through each and every one of them and get an answer for you. Okay, great. So let me read out a few of the questions, and we can take it that way, Sai, if that works for you.
Yeah.
Okay, so there is a question from someone here who's saying, how do we get Shop Now buttons, as most examples that you shared had them? Thanks.
Yeah, that's an interesting question. I think with the Shop Now, um, and I'm guessing you're talking about Shagun, you're talking about Facebook page and Instagram page. I think there's different eligibility criteria for that, and I need to check up on this. So I know that this was there are certain business requirements that need to be in place for the Shop Now button, and I'm not too familiar with exactly what the requirements are. But I can check up on that, and I can follow up with Uma and share details on this. And Uma, I mean, you can probably
that'd be
pass
great.
it on.
That'd be great. But however, just to sort of like make this faster, perhaps, so Shagun, is there a place that we can direct her to on Facebook for her to find out her eligibility or reach out to support? I think that might also be,
Exactly.
Okay,
Actually,
great.
what I would say is the Facebook help, I was sharing this earlier, the Facebook help, where there's a lot of articles, should probably have an article on the Shop Now button, which you can refer to in the meantime.
Okay, great. So Shagun, please, you can look at the resources which Sai had shared, and we have taken note of your query, and when we get a response from Sai or the FB team, we will make sure that, it's translated to you as well. Great. I think that we have another question which says, how does FB support us merchants? Do we have access to someone in FB if we are stuck? I know you shared some resources, but more over and about that.
Exactly. So actually on the resources piece, one is, of course, self-serve, there's articles, all of that. But second, there's also a help center where we have, you can always raise either through email or through live chat support. You can actually speak to people who can, troubleshoot your various issues or help answer different questions that you may have.
Right.
So yeah, that's definitely a resource that you can avail.
Okay, great. Another question we have here is about hyper-local or geo-targeting options. Is it available for local businesses?
Yeah, absolutely. So again, it would depend. So for a place like, let's say Singapore, it might be a little small when we talk about hyper-local or geo-targeting that's available. But let's say when we talk about a bigger place like India, definitely, we've seen businesses who essentially narrow down to within a 20 to 30 kilometer radius when they're talking about their targeting.
Awesome.
So absolutely, there is a lot of hyper-local targeting that can be done. And it's just about playing around with the options available in your targeting itself.
Excellent. Okay. And what's more effective to run campaigns on? Is that like something that you toss up between Instagram and FB? It comes from the same family.
Yes, that's a great question, actually. And I would say the key over here is I would encourage all of us to not view them as separate channels. But really, when we're thinking about advertising, let's view both Instagram and Facebook as a broader platform. So when you're running ads, because the reality is that users are multi-platform. I use both Instagram and Facebook. As a business, you may not know exactly when I'll use Instagram and when I'll use Facebook. In fact, I don't even know. So if I pick up my phone now, I'm not sure whether I'll open Facebook first or Instagram first. So usually what we say is when you run ads, better to run it on all the platforms because that allows the system the flexibility to, show the ad to the relevant person at the relevant place.
So when they're running campaigns, they can actually sort of like say at the placement stage that, run across all the channels.
Exactly.
And that's how it really let the system optimize it for them. Great.
Exactly.
Okay. Nice. All right. And vernacular ads, I think that's a very important question, right? Because everyone's so conscious now of the fact, especially in a multilingual country like India, is there sort of like anything that you can share with us on effectiveness of vernacular or language ads doing better or?
We see a combination. So generally what we see is it's always good to have those different, options in terms of languages. I would say at the end of the day, it probably comes back to what you as a business are seeing and what you as a business are seeing as your potential customer profile. And if you notice that, hey, this is where testing comes into play. What we actually always recommend businesses to do is to test different ads. One with, let's say just English, one in a different vernacular language, or one where you have a bit of both and see which ones are performing better. And really testing becomes the way to figure out what is working best for your business and for your audience.
Right, right. That really leads to the next question. And I think one of the things that we know small business owners are very conscious of, as you mentioned, in terms of resources and budgets or money is, definitely something that they really want to watch carefully. Of course,
Yeah.
they want to invest, but watch carefully. So, how does, what the fees? I mean, the question here says, what are the fees? But I'm assuming that's about budgets, right? And what's a good budget to start with and test and stuff like that on
Yeah.
campaigns?
Yeah, so there's no fees on the platform. So again, Facebook is, whatever your budget is, that's what essentially goes into the campaigns. In terms of what is an ideal budget, the reality is that there is no ideal budget. It really comes down to what it is that you as a business are trying to achieve, and really testing out in terms of what budget is giving you what kind of results. We have seen, advertisers who start off with as little as, let's say, $50, or, if in terms of Indian rupees, it could be like, I don't know, even a few thousand rupees. At the same time, we also have advertisers who are spending, some of the bigger names upwards of millions. So really, there's no magic number. It comes down to you as a business figuring out what your marketing budgets are like and what kind of results you're getting with the kind of money you're putting in.
So really sort of like optimizing it and sort of like testing, seeing what budget amount worked and for what target audience, and then sort of keep optimizing.
That's right.
Right. Okay. Yeah, that's very sound advice. Okay. I think we have a question here about how to add website in video. I'm not exactly sure what they mean by that, but I'm going to assume that they want us to address how is it possible for an ad to direct people to the website, perhaps? Maybe that's a question, but why don't we answer that?
Yeah. I think that's what the question is trying to say. So if you do run a video ad, you can have a call to action, and in the call to action, you can actually input the URL of where you want to direct them to if they click on it. So you could run the video ad, and then, in the ads manager, when you're setting up the ad, you can say your call to action can be shop now, for example, or it can be visit website, for example. And you click on it, and then, you can input the URL as your own website. So it'll direct people to the website.
Yeah, I do know that in, ads that we can run, there are multiple call to actions actually. So how many call to actions do you actually have as options to choose? I mean, I know that's quite a bit. I'd just like to get a number from you.
Yeah, actually, I'm not sure of the number. There's quite a few.
Because I know it's like message, send a message.
Yeah, there's a lot.
Call.
Exactly.
Right? Yeah, there is a lot, right? So which I think is a...
Exactly. So generally speaking, for different objectives, different call to actions make sense. So for leads, you want to, submit lead. If it's messaging, then, there is a messaging kind of call to action. So there's different call to actions.
Right.
And it's playing around with what makes business sense from an advertising perspective.
Fantastic. Okay. I think there's one question there. On Facebook Pixel, do we construct the page through within Shopmatic or Facebook business page directly? So let me try and address that one. So Janice, the Facebook Pixel is something that you can actually get installed onto your website quite easily. Like I was sharing the screenshots with you earlier. If you just go to your Shopmatic dashboard and select FB extension, in marketing, if I'm not wrong, you will find the option to integrate or enable Facebook extension. And when you click on that, it's a very sort of like seamless process. The steps are explained to you, and the instructions are there. It's a piece of code like Sai was sharing, which you will find in your business page, and you just need to add it into just follow the instructions, add it into that extension, and then it's done. If you have any trouble doing that, the Shopmatic consultants are always available to you on the chat tool on your dashboard itself, and you can ask our consultants to help you with that and guide you with that, and we'll be delighted to do it. So we hope that we've answered that question. There is another one here which says, any thoughts and ideas on how I can really build pace in the first 30 days in my FB likes and follows?
Yeah. So again, like I said, I'm going to caveat this by saying, at the very beginning of the presentation, I did say that, likes and follows, we do want to think about what kind of business impact they have. That said, I also know that as young businesses or businesses in the early stage, it does have, kind of an importance, because you do want to build a community. You do want to build this following, and I can understand that that's important as well. So I would say the key way to go about it, first and foremost, is on the organic side of things, ensure that your content is engaging. At the end of the day, people will only follow you as either, as a business or a page, if they feel that there is content that they can get back, which is useful for them. So ensure that there is engaging content, either stuff that's entertaining, stuff that's useful, or even, things that help them learn something new about your business or your product. Apart from that, if we go to the paid side of things, you can run advertising for page follows. So you can run, you can put in budget, and you can essentially run it for a page likes campaign to get people to like your Facebook page.
So that becomes a goal.
That becomes exactly. So then the KPI for the system then is to try and get you people who will follow your page. So what I would say is, at the initial stages, it's a combination of both, but definitely ensuring that you have good content is important. And subsequently, once you feel like there is a base level of threshold, is to then pivot to the more business side of advertising.
Right. Okay. And I think the last question we will take now is how to post an ad.
Yeah. So again, there's two ways, like I said. The easiest, lightweight way is to do it when on your Facebook page, you put up a post and then you just boost it. The most easiest, lightweight way to do it is through that. If you want to go a bit more granular, which is what this whole presentation was focusing on, then you would go through the Ads Manager route. So once you go to the Ads Manager, it's essentially a guided flow. It'll guide you through campaign, you select your objective, then it'll guide you through selecting your audience, putting in your budgets, when do you want to run the ad, and then finally it'll tell you, okay, what do you want as the ad? You can either upload your own image, or you can select an existing post and then you publish. So those are the two ways to go about it.
Right. I think it's fairly intuitive. I mean, having tried the Ads Manager ourselves, I mean, we know that it's an actually fairly simple and straightforward process. It's very sort of instructional, step-by-step kind of a thing. We would encourage you to just sort of like go into it and try that, Sapna, and then see how it goes. And if you need, once again, any sort of guidance, the Shopmatic consultants will be able to guide you as well via chat or calls, as may be the case. Okay, great. So I think that really brings us to the end of the questions. So that was a great Q&A answer session. Thank you so much for that. All right. So Sai, thank you so much again for taking time out of your very busy schedule, I'm sure, midweek, and doing this presentation for us. It was very, very useful. And we look forward to having you over for more of such frequent webinar sessions with us, and to sort of take our merchants through the opportunities of what they can do with the Facebook family with respect to running ad campaigns and really maximizing social media to market the business and grow the business, really. So thank you.
Thanks for having me, Uma. And thanks everyone for your attention and your lovely questions as well.
Great. All right. So